Welcome to Agency Bytes, a podcast for agency owners, hosted by agency veteran and coach Steve Guberman. Agency Bytes is a podcast focused on delivering actionable agency information from agency experts in about 25 minutes. Why 25 minutes? Because who has the attention span for much more these days? And you can squeeze in a listen between meetings with time for a bathroom break or coffee refill before your next meeting.
Welcome to Agency Bytes, a podcast dedicated to helping creative entrepreneurs thrive. I'm Steve Guberman from Agency Outsight, where I coach agency owners to build the business of their dreams. Today, I am thrilled to welcome Rena DeLevie to the Agency Bytes podcast. With over 25 years in Fortune 500 companies and 2 decades practicing mindfulness, Rena is on a mission to eliminate fear-based leadership in the workplace. She's the author of Compassionate Management: How Ambitious Creatives Become Kick-Ass Leaders, and delivered a powerful TEDx talk on using compassion as a business tool. Rena's work has inspired leaders around the globe to rethink how they treat their teams, and today she's here to show us how compassion can radically transform agency culture and leadership. Rena, it's great to see you. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
I'm delighted to be here.
This is super timely and required reading, if you will, for leadership today. Leadership any day, but we're here today. So talk about why compassion and why mindfulness has become such a big part of your career and your life over the past 25 years.
Oh my goodness, where to begin? Compassion, I spent the first, 20 years or so of my career, maybe 15 years of my career, just doing that fear-based management the best that I could because I wanted to rise up the corporate ladder. It's what I was taught. And all I saw was fear-based leadership. And so I was pretty much an asshole. Hope it's okay if I curse. I was really good at being an asshole, and it horrified me because I'm an empath. I'm highly sensitive. But I thought, well, this is how I can squeeze myself to fit into society, please my family, please my boss, please, this is how I could supposedly have it all. And every day was a little bit of a torment, but I had worked so hard my whole life to try to fit in to what was expected of me, that it just seemed like the norm. And something happened. I don't even know what it was. I just decided I was miserable. I was miserable, and I thought, you know what? I would rather not be promoted ever again and just be me. And so I started to meditate just to see if I could manage my anxiety, because I had a ton of anxiety. And then 9/11 happened, and it was horrific, of course. I was living in Manhattan. Manhattan was my home in my heart and my spirit and my being. I spent my whole childhood saying, when can I move to Manhattan, and move there as soon as I could. And to experience my city under attack was horrifying. And I thought, that's it. I'm done. That's it. I'm going to show up as me from now on. And if I lose friends, I lose family, I lose job, so be it. And I started showing up as the empath that I am. And people were like, what? It was really confusing to people. And I just felt a kind of a peace. I think something like 58% of people around the world changed their lives after 9/11. Made huge life decisions, and I was already on the path, but that really solidified it for me. And so I'm extremely compassionate. I would say sometimes to a fault, although I've gotten better at boundary setting. And so to let that show up in the workplace was both terrifying and energizing beyond anything I could imagine.
So talk about the energizing, because when I hear you say you were an angry leader and fear-driven, that's a lot of work and a lot of energy to put into it, especially if that's not your authentic self.
Oh my God.
So is that where a lot of that anxiety was coming from pre 9/11 that you were feeling?
No, I think I was born with anxiety. I'm a Jew. And, you know, on my dad's side, Holocaust survivors fled,
Okay.
to safety. On my mom's side, Russia, Poland fled from the pogroms. I mean, I think it's in my DNA.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
what
Fair enough.
what I've done though is try to break the intergenerational cycle of anxiety by meditating and by teaching how to manage anxiety, because I think a lot of what happened all these years is the anxiety was just passed down, not only genetically but
Right.
in behavior and attitude and language and all of that, because there was no training, there was no awareness. So I've worked really hard to learn how to manage my anxiety. Certainly when I was the angry boss, the fear-based boss, it was definitely my anxiety of, I want to get promoted and I want to fit in. I want to fit in is really what
Yeah.
drove most of my life until I was about 38 years old,
Wow.
which is a long time to
Yeah.
twist myself into a pretzel. Yeah.
But it was your response to like these societal, expectations that you were adopting, and I've got to rise the corporate ladder, and this is what I think the best way to get there is. Maybe it was learned management behavior from other people or whatever. That night and day shift for you. I mean, was it like a light switch night and day of like fear based, compassionate based, Rena showing up at the job?
No, it wasn't light switch.
Okay.
It was fast, but it was slow all at the same time, because I was sort of marinating on this idea for a while and
Hmm.
trying out meditation and tiptoeing into it. And I would say over the 6 years I was at this particular job, probably my nickname in the beginning was, that bitch,
Yep.
right? Because I'm female. So that's the go to if somebody's not nice. Um, and by the end, when I left and they threw me a party, my nickname was, How May I Help You? Which
Wow.
was huge. I mean, one of my favorite nicknames.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, to just say how it energized me when we do show up as who we really are, so much of that energy, that psychic energy, I mean, my body is just exhausted right now talking about how much I had to remember to be a jerk, whereas I didn't have to work at being kind or compassionate. I had to pause and say, now, how would I phrase this being really me? And instead of saying, is it done? Is it done? I would say, hey, do you think you'll have that done by 2:00 on Tuesday? And if somebody said, no, I don't have what I need. And I'd say, all right, well, listen, what is it that you need? And next time, tell me in advance so I can help you. Okay.
Right.
Instead of, I think of an example of an author I heard speak, and he's a gay man who is probably 75 at this point, and he lived his whole life before he left corporate hiding. And an example he gave was that it was natural for him to cross his leg over, but he had to stop himself, or
Mm.
to move his hand and he had to stop himself. So all of that natural body language, for
Hmm.
me, I just want to walk up to everybody and hug them, right? So I mean, not that I would, because that's
You can. It's okay.
invasive. Well, it depends. It depends. But that's my natural inclination. But instead, I
Yeah.
would walk up, and so it is so much energy to hide who you really are.
Yeah.
And it is just so energizing to walk up and be like, what's up? What do you need? How can I help you?
Yeah. Listen, I wear a shirt out in public that says free hugs, and I forget that I have it on, and somebody will approach me with their arms out. I'm like, what's this? Oh, yeah, you want a hug? I'm here for
Oh.
it. So I get that. But how much of that so this example you're using of this guy that, didn't want to cross his legs because he was afraid it was a tell and didn't want to, had to like keep his mannerisms to himself. How much of that is just negative culture, toxic culture versus the person saying, this is not how I feel comfortable showing up in this environment?
Oh no,
Or is it like,
he would have been fired. And for me,
okay,
if I had been my kind self, I mean, don't get me wrong, I have my moods. I'm not all, like,
we all do.
oh, Dalai Lama,
Nobody's perfect.
Right. The idea, I watched people not be jerks, be fired, be passed over. I mean, I watched it.
Mhm.
It was real. And it was, how much abuse can you take from leadership meant you're meant for leadership. The hours I spent being yelled at and humiliated and shamed and shut down, and I just, took it.
Yeah.
Is what led to me being promoted and promoted and promoted, which is, horrifying.
Yeah. But how can somebody, whether it's in an agency or corporate America or whatever, kind of balance that line of, I want to show up in a compassionate way. I want to be patient and guiding with, nurturing and, empathetic, but I also don't want to be walked all over.
Right.
And so like,
Right. And
yeah, right.
that's what
How
I
do you,
teach, right?
how do you,
Because so there has to be a balance of working within the context of the company.
mhm,
So it's coexisting truths, right? So how do I show up as me and still succeed according to this company's definitions? And that is a personal decision that each person has to make. How much can they do? And is it worth it to them, right? For the most part, though, I would say that 99% of my clients, I'm just averaging, have found a way to stay and make it manageable, because very few people have such privilege to just say, I don't like it, I'm going to leave, right? I
mhm,
mean, most of us have to or have had to stay in jobs
yep.
that are positively uh, difficult, let's just say.
Yeah.
So what I teach is compassion and accountability in equal measure. And that is towards myself and towards my boss and my colleagues and my peers and my direct reports. It's all around. So, but it starts with me, right? Or it starts with you as my client. How can I hold myself accountable and have compassion for myself to deliver? And so, you want an actual example?
Yes, let's
Yes.
dig into some examples. But I'm also
Okay.
curious, and maybe this is like next example, the difference between top-down leadership defining this as culture and the one person that's like standing out in a toxic environment as, I'm gonna not feed into that toxicity and be my compassionate self. Probably like who you were. So yeah, do your example. We'll dig into that afterwards.
Wait, say that question again. I didn't really follow.
So I'm thinking I was in a super toxic environment in my
Mhm.
last job that I had. And I was fortunate enough that I could just walk away. I didn't, it was killing me. And I, it was so toxic for me because that's not who I am. And so whether it's a top down leader saying, I need to like infuse empathy and compassion into my culture so that we all work better together and we're all kumbaya, versus my example, me amongst the toxicity, like, you know what I mean? Does
Yeah.
that better frame it?
Yeah. Yeah. So, listen, I've been brought into a lot of companies where top down said, okay, listen, we want you to bring in and change our culture. And I'm like, because unless you are the CEO
Right.
who already is on board with compassion and accountability, it's going to be hard to change the whole culture. And especially if you're a public company, because
Yeah.
a public company is driven by the stakeholders and the money and Wall Street and all of that. And then it becomes really difficult, because then you're talking about, are we as a company going to fight, the expectations of Wall Street, which
Right.
is this anonymous entity that just wants money, is not looking at a company culture. In the smaller businesses, it is much more possible to change a company culture. Sure. But it really comes down to each of us individually. Who do I want to be in this world? Mm. And each person deciding, how do I want to show up today? And it is a daily decision, a moment by moment decision. I'll give you a personal example. Many years ago, I gave birth. My kid is now 17. I gave birth and I was wooed into a job. And the economy had just crashed. And I said, okay. And it required me traveling once a week. Someone was going to, it was within 3 weeks of being there, I was told that I needed to lay off 20% of the staff.
Wow.
And I said, well, I don't know anybody yet. I've only been here 3 weeks, so I can't really, come on. And they said, no, but you need to. And I said, well, is it a dollar amount? Like, can I come up with different approaches to meet the dollar amount? And they humored me and said, fine. So I came up with 6 different paths, job sharing, all different kinds of paths to get to that dollar amount. The most obvious solution, though, was all of us execs, which I include myself. We were making tons of money. And I said, well, I think, the fastest way is for all of us, VP and above, to take a 10 to 15% pay cut, which for us would have been like, bubkiss, to use a Yiddish word, right. Nothing. And they were like, what else you got? Yep. And so I kept presenting idea. And they said, nope. And I said, I presented the 10 to 15% off so many times that the head of HR said to me, if you present that again, you'll be fired.
Wow. Yeah. Get rid of the plebes. Don't touch our bonuses or salaries.
Right.
Yeah.
Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, or let's lay off the $40,000 single mother.
Yep.
And obviously I wanted to take a pay cut, right? So I basically, that's a choice, right? I could have said, F you, and then not had any money to provide for my baby and right. myself. And they were all going to be laid off anyway, right? I mean, that wasn't going to stop anything. Or I could say, thank you for the clarity and figure out what to do. And so I took the time that I needed, but certainly not enough time. I meditated, I cried, I talked with my therapist, and I said, okay, I got to lay off 20% of the people because the economy's crashed and I need to provide for my kid. Yep. And myself. And so I laid off 20% of the people, but the meetings were with compassion. It didn't cross the border, the boundary of me going, I'm so sorry. I didn't ask them to take care of me. Right. I said, look, this is shit. And I'm really sorry. And they were like, we get it. And they were incredible. I mean, these are people I knew maybe 4.5 weeks.
But you treated them like humans and not like
humans.
And that's vital in that situation.
And 2 weeks later, 2 of them called me and said, how are you? And I was like, how am I? And they were like, it's so awful what they made you do. I was like, oh my God, you're incredible. Like, how are you? So that is an example of compassionate leadership where how am I going to show up as me even when I need to do awful, awful decisions in order to protect my family.
Your family and the greater whole, and as a leader, you have to think about the greater whole versus.
Right. And was I going to abandon all these other people who were going to be left to be treated in such a way? No, I was going to be their buffer, which I was. I will say I lasted not quite 1.5 years. There was only so much I could do. And it was awful. Awful. Yeah.
So as you transition to show up differently in your life and career, home, friends, family,
Mhm.
whatever, what were some of the things that you actively started to integrate into your life to make the shift? And I think it's like you said, it's a decision to start doing things differently, but it's a slow transition, and so I'm curious what some of those habits or practices are that you
Yeah.
recommend or believe in.
Well, I meditate every day. Sometimes, and this started 24 years ago. I don't know, a long time ago. As I said, I started to see if I could manage my anxiety. And then I found a therapist who was also a Buddhist. So that was amazing. But she was actually a therapist. So it was like a, combo platter, which was exactly what I needed.
Hmm.
And meditation for me, whether I do it for 20 minutes or as a walking meditation in the woods or 3 minutes,
Hmm.
just sitting, just taking that time to just be, is a pretty huge life changer for me, because in that process, I learned who I am. It's this funny thing that happens if you sit enough times, and I don't mean if you sit long enough, like if you sit for 6 hours. I mean, like, if you sit for 3 minutes a day for a month,
Hmm.
you start to be able to discern what's all the chatter and who's listening to the chatter. And
Yeah.
by that, I don't mean, that I have multiple personalities or anything. Um, it's more, this is really, we are not our body. We are not even our brain. We are the soul listening to the brain talk. And we, our actual soul being, get to choose what to believe and what not to believe, which sounds a little funky, but it is.
Yeah. And
um, yeah,
like, I love that you say it's the consistency, not the longevity, that matters. Showing up daily for a small amount of time versus once every 2 months for a long period of time makes no sense. Yeah.
right. I once went, Sharon Salzberg is this sort of Buddhist guru.
Hmm.
Um, and I once went to sit with her in the city when I lived in the city. And she was doing something downtown at like interval yoga, I don't know. And there were maybe 40 of us jammed in there, and we were all sitting there. And this is very early in my learning about meditation and mindfulness. And she said, so here's the thing. With meditation, you have to do it. You can't just think about it. And there was this collective, oh,
You mean there's work involved?
oh, there's commitment. What?
Yeah.
And it's not even work. It's this commitment to just sit and not judge. And that not judging is the hardest freaking part, because nobody, including the Dalai Lama, including Thich Nhat Hanh, including Pema Chodron, like whatever Buddhist guru you want to look up and name, everybody has thoughts going all the time.
Hmm.
Nobody is without the thoughts going all the time. I need to pick up milk. Hold on. What about toilet paper? Oh my God, does he like me? Is he going to ask me out on another date? Like, all of us have all of that going on all the time.
Hmm.
So the non-judgment is for me a huge part of meditation, is learning how to reframe how I interact with me. Does that sound just totally, it is what it is. I mean, do
To
I,
me, it doesn't, because I've also been practicing for, an exorbitant amount of time. And I'm thinking about the people that are like, man, the anxiety in my life, the stress at my job. What if there was a solution? Oh, this meditation thing sounds interesting. What do you mean I'm not judged? Like, so I try to approach it from, I share about meditation on social media all the time, and I get people reaching out. How do I get started? Oh, cool. Here's what I did.
mm-hmm.
Maybe it'll work for you. Here's what I experienced. Maybe it'll happen for you. Here's how I, approach it from like a spirit standpoint. Maybe you could try that. And so, thinking non-judgment, like, I had no idea that this was what it was about. And so I don't think it's crazy, but I'm sure there are some people that are like, that's not what I thought this was about, 20 minutes into an
imagine,
episode.
imagine a life where you really reduce self-judgment.
Yeah.
I don't know about never, because we are so indoctrinated in this country to judge ourselves harshly. I mean, there isn't a commercial that isn't teaching us how to judge ourselves harshly, right?
Yeah.
Toothpaste, clothing, hair, like whatever. And certainly if you're a woman.
Yep.
Woman,
minority, any of the marginalized, groups that we have in this world of, LGBTQ, like anything, absolutely. And then social media of like comparing ourselves to somebody else's, small image of the one clean corner of their apartment, thinking they've got all their shit together, and my house is burning down.
Right.
Yeah.
I will tell you, if you like this view, over there is the empty box because I just bought a new printer, and on the floor is my air conditioner because I just took it out of my window. And
in January.
Oh yeah, last weekend.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Real quick, thinking about the thoughts, like kind of what I just mentioned, the people that might be listening that are like, this could be something that I could like incorporate into my life and find some relief from, the spinning brain, the, rattling anxiety, the insanity at work, find some peace. Quick start guide to how do I show up for myself? What's that look like?
How do I show up for myself? Oh God, I love that question. Choose your side. Choose yourself always. It doesn't mean lie to yourself. It doesn't mean let yourself get away with poor behavior. It means choose yourself by having compassion for yourself always and all ways, right? If we screw up at the office, hold on. Oh my God, I'm such a F up. I'm such a, what? Stop, hold on, pause. Get oxygen into the brain. Okay, what exactly did I do? I submitted the report without answering that important question. Okay, what led to that? Well, I was really rushed on it because A, B, and C. Why were you rushed? 1, 2, 3. Okay, now you understand. Now I understand the context of what led me to that. I have compassion. What could I do better next time? All right, next time I'm going to be more prepared, and I'm going to write out a step-by-step so that I don't forget that. And how am I going to fix now? I'm going to own my mistake, and I'm going to stay up until midnight and fix it so it's ready for tomorrow morning. Okay.
Yeah.
There's no need for the self-flagellation. That's a distraction from self-accountability. That's a sort of a performance that takes up time and energy. Use your time wisely to become your best advocate, to own your mistakes and fix it.
Love it. Beautiful.
Parent that way also. If you have children, parent that way also. No blaming. Yeah. There is no blame allowed in the household. Just what happened. Let's understand it. Let's fix it. Let's move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. How do we fix it, and how do we prevent this from happening again next time?
Right.
Because all that leads to is shame, whether it's self-shame if I screwed up, or shame on the children, or whatever. And
modeling shame in any environment nurtures shame. Model compassion and accountability nurtures compassion and accountability. And even if that means between you and one colleague, even if your boss doesn't get it, your boss's boss doesn't get it, and your boss's boss doesn't get it, if you can give each other that space, and I don't mean bitching about the boss and because that again is such a waste of energy. It's such a waste of energy, and it nurtures discomfort and anger and misery.
Yeah,
and let me tell you, I was the master bitcher. I would complain. It's that bond against, but it's not a real bond, and it's a draining bond. It's not a nurturing bond.
Yeah. Yeah, we're either perpetuating positivity or negativity, and the choice is ours. And and that impacts everybody around us. There's that ripple effect, the
Right.
butterfly effect, whatever you want to call it. Wrapping up, I'm going to throw a couple. Oh, go ahead. What do you got there?
So here is a little rice-filled bag that says HBOS.
Okay.
I was working in a super toxic environment, and I was talking to my cousin, and I said, I need a little like hacky sack ball that I can throw back and forth, but I want to say HBOS on it. How to what it's really called is a hot bag of shit, because when it poop goes downward, right? So if your boss says you need to do this and you consider that a hot bag of poop, what I always wanted to do is transform it into compassionate assignment, right? Rather than feeling. And so my cousin made this for me, which was great. And I had one colleague I could trust. And I said, hey, we're gonna toss this back and forth when we need to transform something. And people were like, what does it stand for? And I said, oh, how to blow off steam, which I didn't even think of until somebody asked me. And so we would throw it back and forth in my office, start to laugh. Lo and behold, that poop turned into, all right, we got to do it. And what is important about this was it shifted my attitude, not the assignment, not the content of the work we had to do. And again, that nurtures laughing about it, being real, no bullshit, getting it done.
Yeah. It's a perspective changer. And
Exactly.
You had to get the thing done, but you weren't treating it as shit rolling downhill now. It's something we have to do. Let's get done, move through it. Yeah.
So this is an energy change. Everything is energy. Negativity is energy. Fear is energy. Laughter is energy. Compassion is energy. So you can switch the energy of fear into an energy of compassion and still have to do that stupid, useless project, but with joy.
Yeah. With a smile on our face. I love it. I love it. Great stuff. Rena, I want to wrap up with a couple of random questions that may or may not have anything to do with compassion and mindfulness. But the first is, what is something that you just can't get enough of these days? A hobby, a book, a podcast, a show, an activity?
For me, it's walking in the woods. I feel everything, which is a gift and a burden. Just being an empath, I'm like an empath times 1,000. So I'm feeling all the sadness and the fear and the ugliness in the world right now, along with the joy. And it's a lot. So I walk in the woods, and I'm able to connect with source, whatever the God of your understanding is. And that helps me with friends.
Love that.
And hugging. Hugging is hugely helpful for me.
I'm a fiend for hugs. Luckily, I get to live with my fiance, and we both work from home, so it's like hug time, 1,000 times a day. But
wonderful.
I operate in communities where we're very, very huggy. So yeah, I get fulfilled for that. What is a gadget or a tool or something you recently integrated into your life that you look back and you're like, how the heck did I live without this thing before?
Breathing.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we all breathe, but some of us breathe really, really short breaths because we're so tight. I know I used to live like that. So I pretty regularly do a, So
cleansing breaths.
Yeah.
Yeah. Release your shoulders. Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that. And then finally, what is just a super invaluable piece of business advice that you can share with the listeners?
Business advice. Compassion is a business tool. Use it wisely. Set boundaries. Compassion does not mean you're a doormat and anybody gets away with anything. It's the opposite. Compassion and accountability in equal measure. Amen.
I love that. Rena, thank you so much. I appreciate you and your guidance and your wisdom and your experience. And thank you for joining us on today's episode.
Thank you so much. Thank you for doing everything you do, Steve.
Thank you.
Thanks again for tuning in to Agency Bytes. If you know someone with expert knowledge on a topic that agency owners would love to hear about, go to agencyoutsight.com/podcast-guest and nominate them.